The critique from some people about Erika Kirk is generally positioned as a critique when backdropped against normal widows, like the normal everyday widow, the woman who loses her husband to cancer, or Vanessa Bryant, who lost her husband in a tragic freak helicopter accident, or even Sharon Osbourne, who lost her husband to old age and presumably poor health. All of these are relatively normal circumstances in which a woman could become a widow. A political assassination is definitely not. It definitely is a very unique subset of widowhood. And I think that what's unfair in the conversations about Erika Kirk, I mean, say what you will about everything else. I'm just here to add one point of context into the argument. If you're like, well, why isn't she, home with her kids? It's like, well, were people saying that about Coretta Scott King 4 days after her husband was assassinated? I would wager that they were.
This is something I found very interesting. This is the Memphis sanitation workers strike. You can find this, link will be down in the description, from Stanford University, the MLK Jr. Research and Education Institute. All right, we all know that MLK was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, all right? And the night before the assassination, in April, MLK was told a group of striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, we've got to give ourselves to the struggle until the end. Nothing would be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis. We've got to see it through. King, I've been to the mountaintop, page 217. King believed the struggle in Memphis exposed the need for economic equality and social justice, and he hoped that his Poor People's Campaign would highlight nationally. Okay, I bring this up because MLK was assassinated on April 4th. Scroll down here to the bottom just so we can get a little understanding. On April 8th, an estimated 42,000 people, led by Coretta Scott King. His wife led a march 4 days after MLK was deleted. And mind you, the march that they led was not necessarily about MLK. It was still about the sanitation workers. So let's keep going. The SCLC and union leaders silently marched through Memphis in honor of King, demanding that Loeb give the union's request. And this is the sanitation workers, by the way. In front of City Hall, the AFSCME pledged to support the workers until we have justice. And that's from Honey 480. Negotiators finally reached a deal on April 16th, allowing the city council to recognize the union and guaranteeing better wages. Although the deal brought the strike to an end, several months later, the union had to threaten another strike to press the city to follow through with its commitment. So I bring that up simply because we're going to look at a quick clip about women whose husbands were assassinated. And what did the women do after their husbands were taken out? Let's go.
So I've been doing a deep dive about Erika Kirk and political assassinations and the widows that they leave behind. As I was studying the widows of Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, all these individuals who were assassinated from a politically motivated place, it's very interesting what happens with their wives. So for Erika Kirk, a lot of the criticism is that she's jumped back into things so quickly. But Coretta Scott King, when you look at her, who 4 days after the assassination of her husband led a march, an unrelated march in Memphis. I mean, obviously it was somewhat unrelated, but it was planned in advance for sanitary workers. She led that march. 2 days later, she gave a speech or sermon at his church, and then shortly thereafter flew up to New York to lead a march up there, and she continued his efforts, really founding a nonprofit in his name, publishing a book about him, all these things. The critique from some people about Erika Kirk is generally positioned as a critique when backdropped against normal widows, like the normal everyday widow, the woman who loses her husband to cancer, or Vanessa Bryant, who lost her husband in a tragic freak helicopter accident, or even Sharon Osbourne, who lost her husband to old age and presumably poor health. All of these are relatively normal circumstances in which a woman could become a widow. A political assassination is Definitely not. It definitely is a very unique subset of widowhood. And I think that what's unfair in the conversations about Erika Kirk, I mean, say what you will about everything else. I'm just here to add one point of context into the argument. If you're like, well, why isn't she, home with her kids? It's like, well, were people saying that about Coretta Scott King 4 days after her husband was assassinated? I would wager that they were, but I would also wager that it was only the people who politically disagreed with her husband. And I just enter this into the conversation so that we can all just have a more fair and honest conversation about what's going on here. Because when you're comparing apples to tangerines or apples to bananas or apples to kiwis, I don't care. It's all fruit, okay? It's all widowhood. But when you compare apples to apples and you compare wives of men who were murdered through political assassination, the behavior that you see out of Erika Kirk is actually more normalized. There are several widows of political assassination victims who became politically active and were very public in continuing the cause of their husband. Now, I'm not saying that taking either side. I'm just here to add a little bit of context that let's make it a fair conversation when we're talking about the level of public life and political activity that we're seeing out of Erika Kirk, because when contextualized against the backdrop of other widows from political assassinations, it's not all that strange.
I really wanted to leave this with you. Check this out, do a little bit of digging, and you might find it pretty interesting that there have been several women who have been in this situation and they themselves did not get the scrutiny that Erika Kirk is getting. And when you compare Erika Kirk to these women, what Erika Kirk's doing makes perfect sense. Looks perfectly, quote unquote, normal. But let me know what you think. Comment down below. I really do appreciate you all for supporting the channel. So thank you for liking the video. Thank you for commenting and sharing your thoughts. I'm looking forward to seeing what you got to say. So until next time, everybody, grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the JWhit Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor and hit me up with that 3-piece special. Like the video, subscribe, and of course, share it with somebody who would also enjoy this type of content. And make sure you leave a comment because I do pin the best comments to the top. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.